There are a few different mechanics in Brotato that are going to make a huge difference in whether or not you succeed in your runs, and I wanted to go over each of those. There are several mechanics that are pretty hard to understand just from looking at the information in the game. So I'm going to go over those things with you today to help you maximize your damage and increase your knowledge of the game. I'll have the video divided up into chapters for each of the different topics, but I recommend listening to all of it because each of these is going to come up at some point and you're really going to want to know about them. Okay, let's start with elemental damage. Burn damage doesn't stack. It's just going to be the highest damage burn. So if you have two wands, one's purple and one's blue, the purple one is going to override the blue burn every single time. There's an initial hit with the item, but then the burning damage ticks for X damage every Y seconds. You can see that in an item. It's got two numbers. The first one is the damage. The second number is the number of seconds that it burns. So there's one other type of burn in the game. The flamethrower turret does engineering damage though. This is signified by a blue flame. However, you still can't have a stacking effect. You either have the engineering burn, the blue flame, or the orange burn. They don't work at the same time. Again, the one with the higher damage will override the other. The scared sausage, I mentioned this in the other video and I wanted to go over it a little bit more. I learned a little bit, some of you folks taught me a little bit more about this, but the scared sausage gives a chance for regular damage to inflict burn, but since it doesn't stack, this is only good if you don't have any other burn damage, but you're also scaling elemental damage. So for instance, if you had a electric shiv or a taser build or some other elemental weapon that didn't already apply burn, this would be very beneficial for that kind of a build because you're getting that extra damage and it's scaling with the rest of your damage. But otherwise, it has marginal benefit. And finally, the snake also spreads the turret damage, so the blue flame will also be spread by the snake. All right, next topic, the ethereal items. So ethereal items are special because they give you a stat based on the number of enemies that they kill. So if you kill 20 enemies with the axe, the ethereal axe, you will get 1% damage bonus. And what's great about this is that you can use the axe for a while and then sell it and you will retain that percentage bonus increase. So good strategy might be to just have one or two of these items in your arsenal and they're gating stats, and then if you find something to replace it, you can replace it without feeling bad about it because it's going to provide that bonus damage whether you have it in your hands or not. Okay, and then another thing, I think a misunderstanding from my last video, structure damage. Structure damage is not affected by the percentage damage increase stat, so you can't pump up your percentage damage and expect your turrets to be doing more damage from that. It's only affected by the engineering stat. So it's not affected by your bonus damage, your attack speed, or your crit chance. Only the engineering stat. That also means that any negative damage items that you might find are not going to affect your turrets. So if you are wondering about those items that give you like health but take away some of your damage, those aren't going to affect your turrets. So you can go ahead and take those items without any penalty, which is great. However, secondary stats do get added to structures. For instance, Pierce will work with structures as well as Bounce. All right, I want to talk a little bit about how life regeneration stats work. So how does lifesteal work and how does life regen work, and what's better, or how does it apply? I didn't understand this based on what the game told me, but lifesteal is actually a percentage chance that you will heal 1 health point when you deal damage. So it's not about how big the hit is. It's not a percentage of the hit that is dealt. Which makes sense. I mean, I should have noticed this, that it was, those big hits weren't giving me huge amounts of health back. So better to have lots of piercing, lots of high attack speed, even if it's low damage. If it's high attack speed, you will get that health pretty quickly with lifesteal. Now there is a cap to this, only 10 health per second. For HP regeneration, the formula is a bit complicated, but basically 1 HP regen means you heal 1 health point every 5 seconds. At 10 HP regen, you get 1 health every second. So here's a table that you can look at to kind of see how it applies. I don't want to explain the math. Next, let's talk about crit. So crit is a good stat for damage. Of course, you're increasing your damage, sometimes doubling it or tripling it, depending on the weapon, but it's actually better than that, because there are other effects that crit impacts. For instance, there are items that make crit even better. So we've talked about the tentacle before. The tentacle heals you for every crit, or has a chance to heal you for every crit. This can stack, and this does not have the same cap that lifesteal has. So there is no cap on the number of times a tentacle can heal you, as far as I'm aware. Definitely pick up those tentacles if you have a good crit build going, which you should. I think any build benefits from crit, except for like a structure build. So you have the tentacle, then there's the hunting trophy. The hunting trophy gives a chance that you'll receive 1 extra material if you kill an enemy with a crit, which happens all the time, right? Those little aliens, they get killed with crits all the time. The lucky coin gives extra luck for every percentage of crit that you have. The giant's belt gives even more damage for your crits. I think it's 10% of the monster health for each hit, and then 1% of the boss's health for each crit. Explosions from weapons can crit, but not from items. So like rip and tear, that will not crit. Notably, explosions from the bull and the glutton, those will crit. Baby with a beard and alien eyes can crit, but baby elephant and cyberball cannot crit, nor the damage from the lich or the lucky character. One last thing to mention, and this is probably one of the most important stats that you can get. It's a secondary stat. It's piercing and bounce. You may notice on a lot of ranged items, some of them have a pierce number already. So like the pistol, for instance, has pierce, but you lose 50% of the damage on that pierce. And then you can look at the laser pistol, has pierce as well, but only loses, I think, like 20 or 30% of the damage. So you want to be looking at that. I think that each weapon has a certain amount of damage that it loses when you pierce. Yep, just looked it up. It's 50% by default, unless stated otherwise. So if a weapon doesn't have pierce on it before, and then you add pierce to it, the default damage drop off is 50% plus whatever the item that gave you pierce also reduces it. So the sharp bullet reduces it by an additional 20%, and the bandana just has a flat 10% damage reduction. I should also mention that projectiles can pierce more than once. So even though you have a weapon that already has pierce on it, getting the bandana can still be good, because then you have a second pierce after your first one. So the laser pistol would go through 2 targets instead of 1, which sounds great. I think the serrated bullet can be good, but can also be kind of a trap, because if you're already piercing once and getting 50% damage, you'd be then going down to 70% less damage. But still, if you think about like lifesteal and crit and all the other bonuses that come with lots of little points of damage, even if you're only doing a single point of damage from your pierce, it can have a huge benefit if you are getting healed from lifesteal, or if you have the potential to crit with that piercing damage. That's great. Bounce, kind of the same thing. There's only one item that provides bounce, but bounce is good in the same way that pierce is good. You can have both piercing and bouncing at the same time. The bullet will first bounce and then it will pierce. According to the wiki, that's the way that works. So you get bounce and pierce together. It bounces the first time, then it pierces after that. Okay, that's all I had. I just wanted to quickly go through those different stats and give you a overview of what they did. These were mysteries to me for a long time, so I hope that that's helpful to you. If so, obviously leaving a like is fantastic. If you want to support the channel that way, that's amazing. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next Brotato video. Cheers.